We are continuing this series of GB Studios projects. I want to use this tutorial to show us how to make a heads-up display. And I have never done one like this before, so this is something we, kind of like other parts of this project, are learning about together. We want to create a heads-up display, not using the pinning method. We want to use our tile replacing method, but on a vertical scroller, not horizontal like what we would do with the parallax scrolling effect like we've done on some of our other previous tutorials on this channel. I opened up my Piscal project that has all of the tiles from our background in there, and I need to add a few things. I need to add some numbers for this scorekeeping mechanism on here, and a few other things also. The best way is I want this background to be the light color on here for this. So I'm going to select that for the background color. And the first thing I'm going to work on is going to be the numbers. All right, so to make this easy, I'm just going to use the light background and then the darkest of the greens. And these are from the GB Studio website. If you go there and take a look at the colors available for Game Boy, that's what we're using for these. So that's the background color, and then I'm going to go up here and add a layer using Piscal, and you can use whatever graphic editing program you want, but I think it'll be easiest if I go like 3 sets of numbers. And the reason why I'm going with 3 sets of numbers is because I want them to be unique, and one's going to be for the ones, one's going to be for the tens, one's going to be for the 100s. So we'll go here, and in our first one we'll start on the right hand side, and I'll make my number 0. So I have the number 0 done, then we'll just duplicate it till we go all the way through. Once I have those done, then I'm basically just going to repeat that same process, but I'm going to slide them over one section. So for example, if I duplicate this 9 here and go back to the layer with the number, this set of numbers is going to be more centered in here. So that way it's the same number, but it's not the same tile as that other one. It's unique compared to it. So I'll do that, and this I'll start with 0 again and then go through that same process. And of course, once we're done with that, repeat that same process, but this time we'll have these numbers a little bit further to the left. And now we have all of our numbers done that we will need for our heads-up display for the score keeping mechanism. And the last thing I want to do is create a set of tiles that are going to be used to keep track of our lives. I'll duplicate this one just to keep the background color. We could go with a heart on here, and we'll duplicate that. Our game's going to have 3 lives. The first one will have filled in the whole way. Then the second one maybe going to be filled in half the way. And then our third one can be an empty one. And that should be good for this. All right, once those things are all done, then we obviously want to save our Fiscal file, so we have a copy of that, of course. And then we're also going to need to save or export. And we used 10 columns on our previous one. So this is important because we want it to match. So when we bring it into tiled, it doesn't shift everything around on us. So in here we have our animation as a PNG sprite sheet, and it's going to have 10 columns. And then we will download that into our downloads folder. And then we'll paste it in here. And this is called arcade shooter tiles is what I named my old one. So I can remove that one out of there. And then here, I just need to rename this so that we don't have the one in the parentheses. So it's named the exact same. Once that part is done, then we'll open up tiled. And when we look where we had our tiles created, they all show up in here now. So for this, we want, because our game is starting at the bottom and we are vertically scrolling upward, this makes it easy for us to place our heads up display on here. So I'm going to go down here to the very bottom of this, and I'm going to use my stamp, and I'll use the light color on this just to make sure I have that whole bottom area cleared on there. And then after that, I will bring in my heart. I'll have the number of lives on the left-hand side. I think that'll be fine. And then for the score, I'm going to put that on this bottom right-hand side. So for this, I'm going to choose the first 0 that is on the far right, put it here for the ones. And then the one that's in the middle, I will put in here for the tens. And then the third one here, I will put in the hundreds spot right there. You can add other things in there if you want. This is just kind of what I'm using to get us started. Obviously with this, if I keep track where every enemy is destroyed and we add 1 to our enemy count, that's going to give me the ability to have up to 999 for a score for that, which would be quite a few in this game. If I wanted to go on from there, then obviously I would need to do something a little bit different to add a 4th 0. All right, so let's save this progress here, and then we will file and export as an image. And we want to save this as level 1 map. And we want to make sure this is in our folder here. So we'll hit save and export. And yes, we want to replace it. And then we are ready to open up our vertical shooter arcade folder where we have these items saved. And I'm going to copy this map that we have here. And then I will go in here to my Sky Knight folder, and then where it says assets, and then I want to go in here to backgrounds, and then I'm going to paste this in here and replace the file in the destination. All right, now we are ready to open up GB Studio, open up our folder here, and we have this area added to our game in here. And if you remember, we also had created this file in Adobe Express for our tile switching. And so I need to one last time go back to this folder, and I need to bring in our tile sheet to this that we created, and I'll remove the old part that we had in there, and I'll replace this up here in the upper left hand corner. And then we're going to download this as a PNG. And remember, we called this tile sheet BG previously. We will rename it tile sheet BG. Sure, it's saved as a tile sheet BG. And then we can copy it from here and go into this folder, and we'll paste it and replace the file in destination. And then we also need to go back in here into our Sky Knight folder and go into assets. And if you remember when we made our sprite sheets for replacing those for our animations, you need to go in here to tile sets and paste in here and replace the file in the destination. I just want to have one tile sheet in here with all of those just so we don't have a ton of different files saved in this. And now we are ready to start making this function as a heads-up display. We need to add what is called an overlay. So this part down here, we want this to move with the screen. And the best way we can do that is by defining the area that's going to be on the overlay. And then we're going to use some GBVM script that's going to help us have it move as it should. So we'll start going on here, add event, and we are looking for show overlay, and it says fill color. It's going to be black, and we're going to say 017. We will insert an event after, and we will search for GB VM. And the script in here I want to put is going to help us define basically where our overlay is going to be found on our game. So if you use this GBVM script and go VM underscore overlay underscore set underscore submap, then 0, 0 is going to be your original XY coordinate. And then we have our second values are going to be our width and our height. And so the width of this is going to be 20 because it's 20 tiles from left to right on our Game Boy screen there. And 1 tall because it's 1 tile tall. And then we need to say where that is going to be found at, or where it's found at on this screen here. And so this is going to be a coordinate of 0 and for the x coordinates, and then the y is going to be, on mine it happens to be 93. Yours, if yours is 100 tiles tall, then yours is going to be 100 on there. So if you're following mine pretty close, your values are going to be the same as mine, and really the only one that'll probably be different is going to be the last value, and that's going to be however many of these tiles that you found. We got the moment of truth. We do have our show overlay to make sure that the overlay is going to show, and then we have where the overlay is going to be found. And what we're taking it from this here, and then we are placing it at the y coordinate of our viewer screen, which is 117 is 1 short of 18, which is how tall the Game Boy screen would be. And we'll push play. And hopefully we'll see this following our plane with us as we move through. Thank goodness. All right, so it shows it on there, and you'll see these hide just as they get down to the bottom there, because that's where it's at. I'm going to do the life counter next. We have a variable of a life score of 3. Okay, now if we go in here and we look here on our hero plane and we say on player hit by anything in group of 3, then it is going to decrement our lives by 1, and then we have our screen shake, and then we have our game over mechanism with this. So what I want to do here is right underneath this lives, we could actually say insert event after, and we're going to compare variable, compare with value. If lives is equal to 3, then we are going to search for tile and replace tile at position. And we're going to say the tile that we are going to replace, and we just need to change the Y here to go down to where our heart is located. And we are going to change that tile in our background tile set. And then we're just going to scroll through this until we find the full heart in there. Kind of see where we're going at with this. And here's our heart. So when the game restarts, the heart will be full, right? And then we can copy this event and paste event after. And then we'll say if lives is equal to 2, then we're going to change it to the half full, paste event after again. And then this one will say if lives is equal to 1, then we're going to change the tile to 85, or the empty heart. All right, so these are what happen when we collide with a group 3 item, which is the bullets from these enemies. All right, and then I'm going to copy this script, and then we just need to go here to our prefabs. If you remember, we have our enemy tank. When it is on collision with the player, so we will replace script, but then we also need to go up here and we need to add event before, or insert event before, and then deactivate actor, which is going to be self. Reason I'm doing it that way is because it's just easier to add that one event and paste everything else in instead of just leaving that part in and then replacing everything else. So that's for the enemy tank. Here's the enemy plane. Replace script, and then go here, insert event before, deactivate actor, which is going to be the plane. We'll go here to the enemy heli, replace script, insert event before, deactivate actor, which is the enemy heli, and then bomber right, replace script, insert event before, activate actor. And now we've done it to all of our prefabs in here also. That is a little time consuming, but it's a whole lot easier to do it just one time. Imagine if we had multiple of these enemies all the way through, we just had to fix it in the prefab area and it would apply that change to all of the like actors from the same prefab. All right, let's give this a try and see how this works. Moving here, that takes away a life. What happens if we get shot? That takes away a life. That takes away one. Game over. You'll see here when it takes us to the screen, press return, and we are back again. Now we're going to use something called scripts. We haven't used a script in this tutorial yet, so it's another way, if you've never used one of these, just to see how this works, and I think it'll work pretty slick with this here. So on this, I'll click the down arrow, scripts, and add one. Over here on the right hand side, we'll rename this, and we will call this update score display. Just like we would use with any of these objects here, with any of these actors or any of our triggers, we just add an event and we put them in there, but it stores them on the left-hand side in this script. We'll add an event. Remember how we updated our scores on this opening screen? Instead of just saying score is equal to 0, the score ones is equal to 0, and then we renamed it to score O for ones, and then we made a score T for tens and a score H for hundreds. Well, we need to do something in here where it updates each of these columns so we can have this update to higher than 255, which is the highest value you can store for your variable in this game. We'll compare variable with a value, and then we'll click this drop down, and immediately we can select our score O, and we'll say if the score O becomes greater than 9, then we are going to increment a variable by 1. Click on this and we'll go to the tens. So when it just like if we're counting regularly, right? Score O, and once we get to 9 of the ones and it gets higher, then we need to increment the T by 1. So if we get to 9 and then the value becomes 10, then we add 1 to the tens, but then we also have to change our ones value, set variable set to value, and it'll be our ones, and then we're going to set that equal to 0. You can click up here in this little drop down and disable the else if you want to on those. Then I will copy this event and paste event after. And then we need to do the same thing, but instead of the ones, we need to say if the tens are greater than 9, then we are going to increment, you guessed it, the hundreds spot. And then we are going to set the tens value to 0. So that will get us up to 999. I might just do a catch-all here and we'll say compare if variable, compare with value. And I might just say in here, if score of H is greater than 9, then we'll set variable to value. And we'll say we're going to set the hundreds to 9. So it'll max out at 999. So I'm going to make each one of these enemies worth 1 point, so it keeps track of them. 999 enemies for a game like this, I think would be pretty decent. But if you wanted to go 1,000, then you would just need to create another 0 in your sprites, and then you would have to do the same script, changing that if your variable in your hundreds column is greater than 9, then add 1 to the thousands. Now, like I told you, this one gets rather long. In the words of Jurassic Park, hold on to your butts for this one. So we'll go down here and we're going to add another event. We'll say compare variable with value, and I'm going to say if score O is equal to 0, then I'm going to replace tile at position. And the tile I'm going to use is this ones tile over here in the bottom right hand corner. Now on mine, this is 19 tiles over. It's the 19th spot. Remember, because we start with 0 on the left hand side, so that's why we only go to 19 instead of 20. And then the Y position on mine is 93. And I just remember that because that's how I created it and tiled. Your value, if you're following for the same, for the most part, yours should be the same. You should have your 19 for the X value because you probably made yours 1 Game Boy screen wide, but your Y value may be different with yours, depending on how long your different level is. This will work for this level, and then I would just need, when I make multiple levels, I would probably need to go in and change that on my other levels, but that's a pretty minor thing, and I would only have to update that here in the update score display script. I wouldn't have to change it everywhere else. Now I need to choose what tile. We'll go here and I'll keep scrolling until I find my first 0. If you remember, is going to be the 0 that's on the far right of the tile. That's this one here, because each of these has to be a little bit different. If this 0 looked exactly like this 0, then it would change both of these at the same time. So it's just something you kind of got to troubleshoot and work through and one of those problem solving things with this where we have to be a little bit creative in our solutions, I think. Then I'm going to copy event. I'm going to paste event after. We'll scroll down here. And now I'm going to say if it's equal to 1, then I want to change this to 1. Copy event and paste event after. Switch this to 2. And then we'll change this to tile 25 on mine, which takes us to the number 2 there. All right, now before I get too crazy far into this, I'm going to check to make sure this is actually doing what I'm hoping it's doing. So I'll choose the plane first just because it shows up first on my screen. And here where I have that the plane is deactivated and I add 1 to the score O, that's a good place to call my script. So I will search for call script and then update score display is shown right there where it should. Click save. And let's make sure that this is doing what it's supposed to be doing. All right, fired it, and we have 1 showing up on there. Awesome. Now, because I'm making that change to this particular airplane, if you're, remember we have to select the actual object here, just one of them. If I had multiple airplanes, I wouldn't need to do it to all of them. But because we have this explosion animation here and we could only access that if we clicked on the object itself, then we do have to make sure we go up here and apply changes so that if you have multiple instances of that prefab, it applies it to all of them. You can't just select it on here, otherwise that explosion doesn't show up and things aren't working as they should. Again, I don't know why that is. We just have to know that it is that way. Going back here to my scripts, it's rinse and repeat, right? Now I'm going to go through this process all the way through 9 with the 1s, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do next. Da-da-da-da. It's kind of a cooking show style where I did these off screen so you didn't have to watch through that process. But I have, as you can see, 0 through 9 all the way done. And the next thing I need to do, because that takes care of our 1s space, is we need to worry about the 10s spot. So we'll go over here and we will copy this event, and then we're going to paste the event after. Instead of score 0, this one's going to be score T for score 10s, and the value is going to be 0. And this one here, I need to move up to, on mine it's 43, and this is where the 0 is kind of in the middle of that tile. And then also I need to change my X value because I'm not changing this one, I'm changing this one. So this would be the X, this would be the 18th tile spot. Go down to 18, then we'll save that. And then just like I did before, I'll copy the event and paste the event after, and then make sure this is 1 and switch this one to 1. Make sure that I am on the 18 tile spot right there. And then I'll continue that process until I'm done with the 10s column. And would you look at that, we're done with our 10s column. You've already guessed what we're going to do next. We will copy this event and paste event after. And then we'll switch the T to score H. And we'll change that value back to 0. And then we will go up here to the 0 that on mine it's tile 63, where the 0 is on the left hand side of that tile. And then I need to change this X value from the 18th spot. If this is 1918, I need to go to the 17th X coordinate. Copy this event, paste event after, just like we did with all the other ones. Change the value to 1 and change the tile to that graphic that has the 1 on it. And then I'll continue that one more time until we're done with the hundreds column. And now we are done with the hundreds column because this is part of the script. If I go here to my airplane, I don't need to change anything to that because it says update score display on the plane. I'll go here to the tank, and this one, if you remember, this one had multiple hit points. So I'm going to go in here where it says if HP is less than or equal to 0, then it moves the explosion there, and then it deactivates the actor. So I need to place that one in this if while true statement, and we will call script, and the script we are looking for is the only one in there. Update score display. Remember up here to apply changes, and we'll go to our little bomber here, and this will be the same thing. We can go in here in the if statement because this one had multiple hit points. Call script, update score display, apply changes. Then up here to our helicopter. This one only has one hit point, so we can just put it right down here and add an event. Call script update display, apply the changes. Go to our boat, same thing. Call script, update score display, and apply changes. And then our enemy bomber. This one has multiple hit points, so we just need to make sure it's in the if part. Call script and update score display and apply changes. Again, you only have to do that for one of each of these instances. So if you had 100 tanks on this one, you would only need to add that to the one tank and then apply changes, and then it would fix all that for us. Let's just maybe go here to boat, put a boat right here. And this is probably going to slow it down because this is a lot of enemies here. But I want to make sure that we have where we can at least test through the 10s base on here, you know. One more boat. All right. All right, and we got to 11, and we did see it was getting a little choppy there, but we certainly had a lot of things going on in a short amount of space, and each of these were firing projectiles in there also. But the score keeping mechanism seems to be working. I'm just going to undo things out of here. So we just have one of each of these again for our demo. And I think that looks pretty good. Now, the only thing I might want to change on this would be on my game over screen. You know, we keep track of our score here, but then when we're done, we don't have a way to keep track of it here. So there's probably a couple ways we could do this. The first one, we could change this sprite sheet here, but maybe if we go here to game over and we go to draw event, we could do this just for the time being. We could say draw text. In here we could say $score H for the hundreds, and then $score T for the tens, and $score O for the ones. Maybe even before that, go to the left here, and I might say score, do something like that. We'll try this out. So we got an enemy destroyed, and then we'll just test our life counter too to make sure this is still working. All right, and you'll see here on this mode, I should have remembered this, but up here it shows the score, which is the location of it, which is our X and Y, but then it also puts it in the middle. And I don't know if there's a way around that other than on this particular screen, we gave this a logo screen. And if I go on here to like a top-down 2D, and then I go to deactivate actor, and then I'll take out the player for this, and I'll just drag this up to the top. So that way we don't have a cursor on there. But then you'll see when we try this, when it's in a different mode other than title, then the text shows up where you tell it to. Go here, takes us to our game over screen, and then it only shows it up here at the top. So why does it not do that on the title screen, but it does here? I'm not really sure. But if you're trying to do something with your draw text, and especially if it's on a logo screen or whatever, and it's not behaving properly, the workaround that I use is just to switch it to a top-down 2D, and then I deactivate the player so we don't have our cursor on there, and then it'll work just fine for you. So if you wanted to kind of move that around, it should show up wherever we tell it in those coordinates, and only in that one spot right there. And there it is. Enemy counter and life counter system on here. Our heads up display. I'm thinking in our next tutorial, we'll perhaps be looking at sounds, adding some sounds, and maybe looking at that music creator on here just to kind of fine tune some of these things as we continue working on this. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. And as always, I hope we catch you on our next GB tutorial or any Code Peterson tutorial. Have a great day.